A little late for prayer, isn't it?
Do I seem so desperate as to grovel at the feet of a false god? I was waiting for you.
Hey everyone, Wandering Bard here, and I'm so happy to finally be getting to do character analyses of Final Fantasy XVI. Although I will preface this video by saying this is definitely not how I plan on starting them. I suppose that those of you who saw the streams from around launch day will know that nothing has exactly gone the way I thought it would with Final Fantasy XVI, though I absolutely did enjoy the game once UPS finally delivered it. That said, I still definitely thought that when I did start doing character videos that I would start by analyzing Clive, because after all, he's the main character. But I'm still working on scripts for most of the characters in this game, whereas Benedikta only really appeared in the beginning of the story, so I was able to write most of this script during my downtime while playing the rest of the game. So I'm starting with her. She's definitely an interesting character to me for a few reasons. The beginning of the game set her up to be a formidable opponent, and she definitely did give me one of my most memorable ever boss fight experiences. I'll talk more about that in a future video. But I also think that she's the biggest missed opportunity in this game. Like, I know that with the way the game focuses on Clive as the protagonist, there are quite a few notable characters who don't have much of an arc, but Benedikta was set up with all the potential for an arc and even had the beginnings of one near the end of her story, but they just discarded her really quickly. So today I'm going to discuss what we get of Benedikta's history, her potential for an arc, and how I think she could have been handled better if she'd been allowed to, well, survive longer. Before I go further though, if you aren't already familiar with the story of this game, you should probably check out my other video first where I break down the broad strokes of the plot and theming in more detail. Link is in the description. I hope you enjoy watching the videos.
So, tell me about this, Benedikta.
The best and worst decision I ever made.
So we don't actually get very much of Benedikta's backstory in-game, even if we consult the 1,000 tomes, which by the way I will be making a habit of doing as I make more character analysis videos. All we get of her backstory are hints of it from her and Cid. From the small pieces that we do get, she and Cid have a long history together, dating back to a time when Cid apparently saved her life. The brief flashback that we see of that moment shows Benedikta wearing peasant clothes and cowering, and Cid's words indicate that she was being abused or mistreated in some way when he found her, which means she was likely either a slave or she came from an abusive family. According to the wiki, she was a slave in the Iron Kingdom when Cid met her, but I can't actually find anything in-game to confirm this. Anyway, Cid rescued her, brought her to the kingdom of Waloed with him, and she kind of latched onto him. It's heavily implied that they were a couple, and it's clear that they still both cared deeply for each other. And ironically enough, the person that she was back then, as described by Cid, was exactly the kind of person who would have appreciated Cid's vision for the world. A world where all people were free to make their own way in life.
You weren't lying to me then, so what changed? What made you think you had to sacrifice who you were to get what you wanted?
I think that where things would have begun to change for Benedikta would be when she awakened as Garuda's dominant. The power of an icon dwelling within her suddenly made her one of the most powerful people in the world. Combine that with her being a stunning beauty, and she becomes one of the most desirable people in the world, especially to someone like King Barnabas of Waloed, who dreams of having all dominants united under his banner so he could use their power to establish his order on the world. So Benedikta rose to a position of power as head of Waloed's intelligencers, just like how Cid was appointed as Lord Commander of the military after becoming Ramuh's dominant. Between those two, and with Barnabas himself being Odin's dominant, Barnabas is well on his way to realizing that vision. And for Benedikta, this was perfect. She has her relationship with Cid, she has power, and most of all, she has security in her new position. But it wasn't perfect for Cid, because he couldn't abide by Barnabas' dream for the future or trust in the promises that he made. So he left his position behind, and Benedikta with it, and formed the Hideaway as a sanctuary for bearers, hoping to realize his own dream. But he didn't take Benedikta with him, and she took that very personally as a rejection of her. A rejection which, as the lore puts it, left an abyssal hole in her heart. But the question is, why didn't he bring her along, and why didn't she go after him?
I wonder that you summoned us at all. Have you so little faith in your own men? It It was the Dalmex who drove back the Crusaders in the Battle of the Twin Realms, was it not? Or am I mistaken?
When we reach the events of the game, Benedikta has completely dedicated herself to her liege and acts willing to do anything to realize his dream. We first see her as an ambassador to the Dalmex, where she and Hugo, aka Titan's Dominant, have a rather steamy scene together. Given that we later learn that she's also in a relationship now with Barnabas, this raises several questions. One of the in-game lore entries indicates that her relationship with Hugo seems to be guided by Barnabas as part of his dream to unite dominance. In fact, seemingly everything Benedikta does, from being with Hugo to going to Lostwing to find the rumored dominant of fire, is for the sake of that vision. But another lore entry says that she does have eyes and ambitions for Hugo, and Hugo himself claims that they share a dream of ruling together like gods over the world. So it's possible that she's only using Barnabas as a means to an end to realize her and Hugo's dream, but it's not really clear which one of them she's playing. But this devotion to Barnabas is a far cry from the person that Sid describes her as he claims that her dreams were once the exact opposite of his. So, when Sid does meet her again, as he's helping Clive find his brother's killer, he accuses her of selling herself out. And when she asks him to come back to her, he thinks that she's motivated by her devotion to her king rather than by love for Sid. And he's half right. It's very apparent that she does genuinely love him, and that she still feels the sting of his betrayal. But she isn't willing to give up the safety and security that she has in Waloed to go and chase Sid's vision. She wants him back, but she wants that on her terms, with them working together at Barnabas' side. And she also knows fully well that this isn't who she used to be. And it would have been one thing if her priorities had just changed over the years, but that's not how she presents herself. She presents herself as someone who's conflicted over her loyalties. And Sid is trying to reach her here, to break through to the person that he used to know, but she's not willing to look inward and consider what he's telling her.
If you would stand between our leash and his dream, then you leave me no choice. Goodbye, Sidolphus.
She's still hurt by Sid's betrayal, as it were, and she lets that hurt guide her actions instead. She fights Sid and wins, easily, but her fatal mistake was leaving her summon monsters to finish the job, assuming that Clive, a mere branded, wouldn't be able to fend them off again. And, well, underestimating Clive continues to be her undoing. The boss fight against Benedikta is one of the best designed battles I've ever gotten to experience. The reason that I'm bringing it up here in this character video is because of what the fight represents for her character. She sees Clive as an admittedly talented, branded, but just a branded, and as such she considers him beneath her notice. She doesn't recognize Clive's strength of spirit, or that the magic that he uses isn't from him being a bearer, but from the blessing of the Phoenix. And I adore how, in this battle, the typical boss fight difficulty scaling is used to advance her narrative. She becomes increasingly desperate as Clive and Torgal simply refuse to die, and she draws more and more on Garuda's power, throwing everything she has at them, and yet it's still not enough.
How did you do it? How did you even survive? How?
The answer is simple, Benedikta. He was fighting for something he believed in.
And that's the simple truth of it, is that Benedikta doesn't actually believe in King Barnabas or his vision. Her heart isn't loyal to him. She stays with him because she's terrified of being abandoned again. She latched on to Sid as someone who was safe after he rescued her, and then he left, and she's afraid of losing anything else, of being unloved and abandoned. So she stayed in Waloed, where she was an object of desire for powerful people, even though she knew fully well that they only valued her because she was a dominant. But she was willing to use that, to use her beauty and power to get what she wants, as long as it means she is wanted. And in most cases we'd say that was a slippery slope, but in hers it makes sense when you consider that there's no record of a dominant ever losing their power, except in death. So she had no reason to fear, until she lost to Clive. And when Clive defeats her in battle, and Garuda briefly stops answering her, we see her exactly as Sid described. A scared, angry girl who's tired of the world and its cruelty. Soon after, in a moment of desperation after bandits attack her, her powers do return, but she is not able to control them. She transforms into a rampaging Garuda and battles Clive again, but she falls in battle after Clive transforms into Ifrit. This, for me, was one of the biggest story surprises. On Square Enix's website, when they described her character before the game, they portrayed her as someone who meets Clive during his search for the Icon of Fire, and who had to face her past as a result. They do deliver on this, I suppose, since those things absolutely do happen, but the way they happen to me does not feel satisfying. I kind of went in expecting that she'd become an ally of Clive's, and have her confront her demons as they work together. And given the history that she has with Cid, that was more plausible than I realized going in. During those last moments before fully becoming Garuda, she expressed regret over not listening to Cid, realizing that he was the only one who truly valued her as a person, rather than as Garuda's dominant. I definitely thought that they were setting her up there to reconcile with Cid, and hopefully find her way again. Instead, they killed her off as a way to demonstrate Ifrit's power, which narratively advances Clive and Hugo's stories, but still feels super dissatisfying. Had we gotten to see more of her, we could have dived more into her backstory and worked through the trauma that came with it, and maybe see her grow as a person. Alternatively, we could have seen her break bad again after Cid dies later in the story, like have her believe that Cid's ideals were worthless if they got him killed. Either way, we could have seen more development for her character, and I think the fact that they left her so unfinished was a huge missed opportunity, and also a large part of why critics complain that the female characters in the game felt underdeveloped. I will definitely have more to say about that in future videos, but for now, this is where my analysis of Benedikta is going to end. I think her conflict over her loyalties was well done, and we see narratively the consequences of the choices she made, but I think she could have had a shot at redemption, and it is upsetting to me that we don't get to see that. Let me know what you think a redemption arc for Benedikta could have looked like down in the comments, and please let me know if you enjoyed the video. I really enjoy making these videos, and I'm especially looking forward to doing the one on Clive. So if you enjoyed this one, please like the video and sub to the channel if you want to see more of these as they come out. There's also now a community Discord that you can join using the link in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a good day. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.